and welcome to this week's news bulletin from the Christian Institute. The UK Supreme Court has dismissed an appeal from Christian B&B owners Peter and Hazelmary Bull over their policy of only allowing married couples to share a double room. The 5 judges said the policy discriminated against gay couples, even though it was applied equally to unmarried heterosexuals. Mr and Mrs Bull had originally been ordered to pay £3,600 in damages to Martin Hall and Stephen Preddy after refusing the 2 men a double room. Hazelmary said the room policy was based on sincerely held Christian beliefs, and the court's latest ruling simply reinforces the notion that gay rights trump all others. But despite a disappointment at the outcome, Mrs Bull says she has no regrets.
We have no regrets about contesting this case, nor will we ever be ashamed of our beliefs. We're not perfect people, but we are trying to do our best to live out our faith with honesty and consistency, and we will continue to do that come what may.
The appeal was backed by the Christian Institute's Legal Defence Fund. Spokesman Mike Judge warned Parliament needs to reform the law to allow a more reasonable approach which balances competing rights. Otherwise, Christianity will become the belief that dare not speak its name. A new report into church teaching on human sexuality commissioned by the Church of England says gay unions could be marked by special church services as an act of worship. Although the church says the services would not be blessings or part of liturgy, critics believe the move would mark a huge shift away from the Bible's teaching. Julia Mann, an Anglican vicar and blogger, said, "Conscious of our own sin and weakness, we must oppose such services instead of consulting about them. The day these services come into use in the Church of England will be a terrible day for the gospel." Another vicar, Peter Old, said the report simply doesn't know how to handle men and women like myself, who, despite not being heterosexual, have made tough choices to fashion our lives in line with the biblical truth. The Church of England is effectively abandoning those of us who have struggled to follow traditional Christian practice and telling us that we have made the wrong choice. But report chairman Sir Joseph Pilling says the special services would be a way forward.
If a priest and the priest's PCC agree together that a couple in a permanent, faithful, stable relationship, typically a civil partnership, in the congregation, for example, come forward and say that they would like their relationship to be marked in an act of public worship, that should be possible. We're not suggesting that there should be a liturgy for that. We're not describing it as a blessing. But we are offering that as a way forward.
A new campaign group has been launched to challenge the government over its new Anti-social Behaviour, Crime and Policing Bill. Reform Clause 1 is a collective of civil liberties organisations, including the National Secular Society, the Peter Tatchell Foundation and the Christian Institute. Under Clause 1 of the proposed bill, anti-social behaviour orders, or ASBOs, are to be replaced by injunctions to prevent nuisance and annoyance, called IPNAs. The new injunctions are designed to be easier to obtain by the authorities and have a lower threshold, namely nuisance or annoyance. Reform Clause 1 say the new proposals could have a chilling effect on free speech and could catch street preachers, carol singers, protesters or anyone expressing a strong opinion in public. Parents of children at a school in Staffordshire were outraged after being told that their child would be punished for racism if they missed a trip to a workshop on Islam. Lynn Small, head teacher of Littleton Green Community School, wrote to parents saying that the trip was mandatory and that all absences would be investigated for their credibility and will only be sanctioned with a GP sick note. The letter continued, "Refusal to allow your child to attend this trip will result in a racial discrimination note being attached to your child's education record, which will remain on this file throughout their school career." Parents at the school said they were shocked at the threat, and local MP Gavin Williamson commented that the school's approach was heavy-handed and slightly bonkers. Staffordshire County Council said it had strongly advised the head teacher to reassure parents about their right to withdraw children from religious activities, and Mrs Small has now apologised to parents for inaccuracies in the letter. Belgium has moved a step closer to introducing child euthanasia after a Senate committee voted 13-4 in favour of the proposals. The legislation would allow terminally ill children to ask to be killed if they are deemed capable of making their own decision and if their pain is unbearable and cannot be alleviated. Under the proposals, euthanasia would also be extended to adults with dementia. But anti-euthanasia campaigner and cancer doctor Benoit Bouzelink said the new law could open the door to infanticide. He said, once the possibility for euthanasia exists for children, demand is likely to rise. It's clear among adults that it is difficult to keep euthanasia within limits once the taboo of killing has fallen. And finally, a book of Psalms has become the world's most expensive book after it sold at auction in America for over $12 million. The Bay Psalm book, which dates from 1640, achieved its valued status despite criticism about typographical and printing errors. It was printed by settling Puritans as a faithful translation into English of the original Hebrew Psalms. The Bay Psalm book, which went under the hammer at Sotheby's in New York, was one of two owned by the Old South Church in Boston, its yellowing pages making history in more ways than one.
It brought a very strong and hefty price. It is a world record price for any printed book, and it's incredibly important because of its story. First book printed in America, first book written in America, incredibly rare. Only 11 copies survived compared to 48 copies of the Gutenberg Bible, maybe 200 copies of a Shakespeare First Folio.
The book was bought by philanthropist David Rubenstein, who says he plans to loan it out to libraries across the country. Well, that's all for this week. For more information and regular updates on all of our stories, plus much more, visit our website at christian.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.